Good morning, traders. Happy Tuesday out there to everyone. Hope that everyone had a nice evening there last night and be all ready for this day coming up in front of us here. And just before we go into the charts, a few items to be aware of for the day session here today. Well, really just one main item, that's going to be the JOLTS figure and factory orders. That will be due out at 10 o'clock Eastern there. It is listed as red impact, so we'll see how the market wants to respond to that, but that's not until 10 o'clock Eastern, so that'll be right into that morning inflection point there at the top of the first 30, so we'll keep that in mind, but for our purposes here, smooth sailing as far as any 830 points go. So we're going to be able to grab our daily chart of the S&Ps, see what we have unfolding overnight. We did proceed to keep it as an inside range bar for the most part so far. We are getting that 2-period rate of change to hook down just for the first day. So trading inside the previous day's bar. The low from yesterday being 52.4675. So we've kept it in between those two broader points, right? Still working as an inside range bar. So fared all right. Overnight high, on the other hand, 53.03 half. So also a little bit short on the previous day's high test. So fitting in nicely inside that previous day's bar. What we also want to note is that we are working on doing some testing into the tail. We have the slow line correcting here on the daily charts, just correcting itself back towards zero. And so far, our response from price has been respectable. We're also still trading around the 75 zone, which was the initial impulse bar down that we had from not last week Thursday, but the Thursday prior at 73.50, which we have traded around a little bit over these past couple trading days, and that's where we're coming into the session here, is trading around that point. So in terms of the daily chart, still putting in some decent work in here. We also just will make one quick mention over here just to note that the NASDAQ coming into the session today is in more of a balance mode. We have the 3-bar balance mode in the NASDAQ, but not quite there, and the S&P. So should we get some better range expansion, we definitely want to be aware of that there, and the NASDAQ future as well. But that's where we're landing on the daily display in terms of our S&Ps. Where we start to see more detail would be on our intraday charts, right, such as the 120-minute visual. And we kept it real nice overnight. We were keeping up with this theme of cycle high, outside, down bar. Came back up, we put in a lower high, one lower high. We proceeded to have our nice, swing to the downside. We pulled back up, and point being, we still put in yet another lower high. So this is our second lower high. Overnight, we came in and tried it again, and it had fallen just a notch short. So what we're starting to see is that nature of the lower cycle highs. And then in more of our recent data here, this is a 120-minute chart. If we drop this down to like an hourly or 30-minute chart, it'll show the way that we're kind of coming in and testing the inside pocket zone from yesterday's trading. Right, so this could be viewed as a kind of a wide ABC type of wave structure. That same 73 half that we were looking at on the dailies is still a value here on the intraday charts as well. And up above these little windows here, 05 to 13, just viewing those as kind of being overhead, in case we forge up at all, that will be kind of initial resistance. And at the moment, just kind of would be a little more interested in seeing how we treat this pocket zone, right? We've already tested down into it, filling in some of the blanks if we look at what we had unfolding in the overnight session, right? Just a little bit of a downdraft in the Europe session. Proceeded to trade high to low, so we're coming in and just doing some work inside of that Europe session, doing a little bit of repair work. All right, but do appreciate the structure on the 120. You could also see it's a little more clean on the oscillator, the ABC type of wave structure or rhythm that we're working with. So I think this time frame will serve us well for our purposes there today, just in terms of monitoring our structure and the S&Ps. So we'll keep that in mind. Once again, we got the 73.50 and the 52.50 down below, right, as being good reference points. Then up above, more of a window, right, the 05 to 13 resistance zones up above for that ES. All right, so we'll keep tabs on it. It will be interesting if we do take out that tail. That would provide a little bit more of interest for us there, simply because we do have that ROC up 1-2. Right, poised to flip down. We're still trading inside the bar, so no real major advancements as of yet, but that 52.46.75 right on the other side of 50 would be an important level, bigger picture. So that's where we're landing off on the daily. S&P, we'll take our DAX into account here as well. The DAX proceeded to give a deeper test down overnight. If we look over on that left-hand side of the chart, we also note that we had been in one time framing mode, so we're filling in some of that work as well. Similar to our 120-minute oscillator on the S&P, boom, 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 or ABC, rhythm down to part wave on its reaction. So this 18.435 still remains important, even though we traded through it. We kind of tested it and lifted back up. That's our low from last week, coupled with previous cycle high from the trading on the 24th of April. So confluence zone there for the DAX. How does this look on the intraday data? Well, it's just going to show up as a simple test down, right? Two-part wave, the oscillator. So we came down, did the look below the low, and now kind of like the S&Ps, right? We're doing some repair work from the overnight session, right? Just some downdraft from Europe, right? Starting around that 3 a.m. Eastern time. So a little counter-reactive lift for now, but we will still have some work cut out for us there in the case of the DAX. I think the hourly chart should serve us relatively well there on that front. Alright, so that's our index future category there, and 3-bar balance mode and out of the NASDAQ future. Then we can move on along to our currency group, which had one impressive advancement on the close yesterday. We essentially closed on the high tick, and we were just able to do some looking above that 1.090.95 previous cycle high on the daily charts. Thing is, it was relatively short-lived. I mean, we didn't spend a whole lot of time up into that zone. So if we take our 120-minute display here in the euro currency, this is hold the line there. What we can see is the nature in which we came up. First of all, taking out the previous day's high yesterday was admirable, right? Nice and impressive there with the EC. So we came in, did some work there, and then overnight we really had a further advancement. So we did the look above and then essentially failed. And what we're doing here is as well filling in all of the blanks. So we actually coming into the session here right on the other side of the 8 a.m. reading, we could say we've done a pretty decent fill job there. Beneath 86.55, we can actually mark that with a bit of a caution zone there. Going beneath that point wouldn't be too constructive. We'd start to reintegrate in between the 86.55 and the 84.95, but we can see just the nature in which we had this unwind during the Globex session, right? After having the advancement first, right? We traded low to high, rang the bell, the full look above, and now proceeding to work ourselves back a notch. So 86.55 should serve us as a little bit of a caution zone there with that of the euro currency. You can come out to the higher time frames and see how that shows up in the data there as well. Previous high clusters here that we had from the trading on the second and the third respectively in the euro currency. So a little form fitting there as far as where we're working ourselves back towards. Alright, and then we have our gold future here as well, the GC. Out of the group, a bit more on the contained side. We're still in between these broader points, although we could certainly say we're giving a test of the inside pocket zone on the gold 120 minute. But 23.88 and 23.34.8 on the kind of bigger views here on the 120 minute chart. Would serve us as, being more important points of interest. We do have cycle lows along the way. This 23.43.3. We'll see. We're kind of keeping ourselves propped up above that. So we could view this also as a bit of a zone, right? From 43 down to 34. Those are kind of lower zones of interest there in the gold. We are pretty tightly wound here on the daily chart with price bar overlap. We had a good showing yesterday in terms of low to high, but look at the structure here on the gold as of late, right? Our 3 days of low to high, or rather 3 days high to low, 3 days low to high. One red bar, one green bar, one red bar, one green bar, one red bar. So we're going through that price bar overlap sequence more or less there in that of the gold. 120 minute chart should be a nice aid in monitoring that development there in the gold. And one other group that we want to take a look at here, since it was mentioned yesterday, inside the metal category would be that of the silver. Right? So here in the SI, we had the pause bar, right, the look below previous test lows, and then closed at the upper end of the range. So we were faring all right. We left the tail and then proceeded to, work ourselves back up just a notch off for the lows, right? So we had left a bit of a tail. Right, we were able to proceed to go in and eat the tail, so we didn't have much issue with respect to that, but we can see this resolution here on the testing phase here with that of the silver. So we had good counter-reactive lift. If we take into account where we traded to with respect to that daily 5 SMA, we did make a slightly higher high, meaning we took out the 30,965 overnight, traded up to the 31 handle, and we were also dealing with, as we can recall from looking yesterday, from those 3 days of high to low, we were testing into some lower developed structural zones. So the first try up into that area was met with a little bit of resistance. We proceed to work it back. So we put in a lower low there in that of the SI. And just to go along with it, even though we took it out yesterday, meaning we made a lower low there, this nice cycle here. We have two tests. I like watching this 30.235 if following in there with the silver. Right, that was our previous low that we traded through yesterday but didn't close beneath it. And then today we're coming in and trading beneath it, and we'll see as to how we want to handle that. But just in honor of kind of following up a little there with the silver, since it was mentioned yesterday, I believe it was in conjunction with the 120-minute chart, and we were just, I believe the mention was seeing how we want to treat that daily 5 SMA on any type of further up. So we just ran into a little bit of low developed area that was met with initial selling. So a lower low there taking place on that daily chart of the silver. And then moving on along, we have the crude next in the queue. The crude, obviously the one with a much higher degree of range expansion yesterday. Right? I know we had the little chatter going on with the supplies increasing, with OPEC and everything. So that certainly seemed to be a bit of a pressing factor there, but technicals will always take the leeway. So, big picture, what we have going on here with the crude is now solidifying ourselves coming out of the bottom of the range there in the CL. We'll grab this intraday chart so we have that as well here. Reviewing as to how this all started to come to fruition here, we had, obviously, as we know, the trap coming out of the prolonged 2.5-week trading range, right? The fake out to the upside. We came down to the bottom, and then we blew through the bottom yesterday, right? So at this stage, if we chop off this bar, we were just noting at the time we were coming back down to the lower end of the range to see how we handle the big spike tail low, and we wasted really no time. We just went straight through that previous low without really backing off too much. Not only that, but we also went through our previous low from our last little trading range that we had, that 74.66. So in one roundabout swoop here, if we blow this up, include a little bit more data. There we are. This zone here essentially was not offering too much footing or support, and also spent plenty of time into that area. So these nice tails were lining up with that previous range. So when we came down and sliced through all of that, right now what we're dealing with, I mean, we don't have many further major zones down here. What you would be looking at is, big spike low, right, inside pocket zone. And we did have the nice readings on the 2-period rate of change. Good trendiness there yesterday. So we'll keep in mind in case we get any signs of consolidation there in the crude. It would be relatively fitting just with the nature of having a high degree of trendiness yesterday. But into the zone here, you really have to look way on the far left here. We'd start to enter into this lower inside pocket zone. This goes from basically 74 down to 71.33 is this whole area there with that of the crude. And outside of that, speaking just purely off these daily technicals here, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of one time framing down. This would be the fourth close below the daily 5 SMA. So we do have the prospects or potential for some better extended run to start to form there in the crude, meaning closes on one side of that daily 5 SMA. So that's the daily chart of that of the CL. On the intraday display of data, I mean, we put in an overnight low of 72.48, so we traveled ways This purple zone here is just the previous day's low, same level from the daily chart. So any type of like consolidation or bounce, you really have to see how they respond to the previous day's low, since there has been good damage that was done. So we're coming into the session with a bit of a divergence on the hourly charts, but we'll see 73.71 would be the hourly moving average, which still comes in beneath the previous day's low. So we have a small technical condition. We'll see how the market wants to come in and respond to that, if at all there. So that's in the case of the crude. With it's going to have its EIA data there tomorrow. Alrighty, and then we have our bonds rocking and rolling here in their morning session. Right, this is kind of almost reminding us the inverse to some extent of that of the crude, just meaning that the bonds are doing one time framing to the upside, whilst we have the one time framing down in the CL. So fourth day of low to high. Another group that really had kind of done a job of blowing through the initial points of interest. 117.24 was the top of this previous little zone here in that of the bonds. So we've been advancing quite well. Of course, this swing high or cycle high is going to serve as a bit of a magnet for them, just to kind of gyrate close towards. It's ways there. It's 118.27, so it's a full another 20 ticks up from where we're trading currently. Other thing is that with these bonds, we take the 240, we start to go down from that, so meaning the 120 minute, the hourlies, the 30, the 15. Looking in the oscillator and all those variety of time frames, right? So look at the oscillator as we go up from that 15 to the 30, right? Just showcasing nice, rhythm on the highs there. Hourly charts, slow line correcting back towards zero, still making new highs. So that's kind of a little bit of the process you can go through as well. Just noting that along the way up here, we haven't really formed any signs of loss of momentum or divergences there. So one that we can be on guard for. Also, always nice to look at the yield displays here. So we could take the yields on the intraday. You have to really do the liberty of including some more data here on these intraday yield charts, and then we'll grab our daily view with that as well, just to kind of see what we have going on here, right? So we have the yields opening here right around 4.516% mark. So we do always have the case of monitoring the round figures. In the case of these 30 years, you'd be looking at 4.5% as kind of being the round figure there for that of the yield. So trading near that, you have a cycle low at 4.504. So any further up in the bonds, yield would be pushing down. So just kind of noting these would be our initial zones of interest there, right around the 4.5% round figure. Right, so, and then for good measures, right, we have to pay the respects to the 10-year notes as well, the shorter end of the curve. And we can see not too dissimilar in their approach, right? Another group without many signs of a loss of momentum. We have that swing high that's going to be acting as a bit of a magnet. Not that we have to get all the way up there and trade to that point there today, but not much standing in front of their way there. And we'll follow along, see if we note any intraday structure that would be of interest for us in terms of sell divergences, continuation patterns, etc. And then lastly, just for our purposes here, what we had unfolding overnight, we had a reopening pretty flat during the Asia session, and then Europe started to bring it up there just a notch. So no major back-to-back sessions to concern ourselves there with on those bonds. Alrighty, and with that, we're going to dial these items back here. We're going to get these S&Ps back in check, and we'll see what we got lining up here for this morning session in front of us. Once again, no data, so no worries with respect to that. That'll be at 10 o'clock Eastern, so after we go into our opening. So we'll see how everything starts to develop and trade off that 8 a.m. reading here in the meantime. But should be a rather nice activity. We see that we've opened up the range in some of these other groups as well, the crude, the bonds, euro currency, etc. So should be for some nice activity out there to latch on to.